Hello.
Hello.
It's so wonderful to be here, to be back with you. Every time I come here, something happens. The Spirit just knows the address. And so, thank you. You are a community with arms open, not only to each other, but to the world. As was made clear by the eagle that visited your community and the stray dog that visited your community. Of the two, the eagle and the stray dog, I'm clearly more like the stray dog. So, but you've been here for 10 years, here in this planet as a community for 10 years, and that's significant. The world has changed so much in that time, as I'm sure each of you have changed so much in that time. The courage that it took for you to step out and to be who you are, and then the strength necessary to sustain that, that's not a small thing. And so from the Wesley House just down the street, I come to say congratulations, thank you for what you bring to the world and to people's lives. What you see on this table here are 10 birds. Now, I'm going to tell you 10 stories. That is a reference to your 10 years of existence. We're here in the third Sunday of Advent. Advent is the season of waiting. Not the kind of waiting that is sort of irritating, but the expectant waiting, the hope-filled, pregnant with possibility waiting. Because the world where we're living right now, it's not a great place to be. This is harsh. And it seems to be getting harsher. And so what Advent is about, I think, is actively waiting for that new world to come. So that available to our senses, we would be able to perceive justice and beauty and truth and love. Because this world, well, it's clearly born breach. And so we wait for it to be turned right. We wait for justice and for healing to come. So what I practice is something called visual homiletics, and it comes out of my understanding, my belief, that a visual experience has some unique gifts to connect us to the gospel and to one another. And I would add to that, not only is it the visual experience, but I also think and to know that the haptic experience can connect us with each other and with God. So, I guess you could call it a haptic homily, but that doesn't really sound good coming out of my tongue. It feels like there should be clowns coming or something. The pieces that I make here, this is visual art, obviously. It's something for you to behold, something for you to see, but it's also haptic art. It's something for you to touch. These are meant to be held. And so these 10 birds are going to migrate as we've gathered here. I'll finish with a story and I'll hand the bird to somebody that's handy, and we'll just pass that bird around. Hold it as long as it needs to be held. If it's at home in your hand and that's where it stays, then that's where it stays. If you don't like birds, and some people really don't, it's okay, I still love you. You probably know that the birds are rather indifferent to you. So this first bird is a type of finch. A type of finch that comes from the Canary Islands, hence the name Canary. It's made of bird's eye maple, but I'll say a little bit more about that wood later on. But it's sitting perched on top of a cage. And that cage once belonged to a miner in West Virginia. And the miner would take a live male canary, the ones that sing, down into the mine. Because a canary needs clean air in order to sing. That's where the expression comes from, canary in a coal mine. And so when the canary went silent, and they would apparently sway back and forth a little bit, when the canary went silent, the miner knew that the air was not safe and it was time to leave quickly. And the canary made it. Sometimes they died, but sometimes the miners died too. So the miner, carrying that cage, doing hard, noisy, backbreaking work, was listening the whole time. Listening for the sound of a canary. Listening as if his life depended on it. because it did. And so here we are. These birds, those birds, their fate is our fate. Their song is our song. And it's our obligation to listen as if our life depends on it. To see as if our life depends on it. Because it does. This wood is Osage orange. You're familiar with it if you see those great big green balls that you see hanging on trees in the country. That's hedgerow, that's Osage orange. Now, some people put them around the foundation of their house to keep spiders away or snakes away or credibility away. I'm not sure what. The Osage Indians use this wood for tools, for hunting tools and for warfare. When you feel it, you'll see that you'll feel that it is dense and could do an amazing amount of damage. When we came, we being Europeans, when we came, we planted this as to mark off our property, which I'm sure was odd to the Osage Indians. We used it as a hedge, and then discovered that it's nearly impervious to rot, and so we began to use it for fence posts. So when you see old fence posts that are kind of gnarled and been there for a long time, it's probably what you're looking at. I'm not sure, but I think this bird is a eastern meadowlark. It could be a western meadowlark, I can't tell them apart. But they sit on fence posts and they sing. And there are some birds, for me, whose song just pierces, just gets me in a physical place. And the meadowlark is one of those. It is also, as all birds are, endangered. Also made out of Osage orange, this is a calliope hummingbird. Actual size. Weighs a little less than a dime, 3 grams. So it weighs less than this wood does. It's one of the smallest birds in the world, one of the smallest birds that migrates, and it lives in Canada, British Columbia, Oregon, and Washington, and it flies, it migrates down to Central America. It flies right over fences and walls. Calliope hummingbird. This bird is made of wood called butternut, also known as white walnut. And this bird was right there. It's a type of wood that is native to Canada, and it's extinct in Canada. You can't find this wood there. Our trees are endangered. Our birds are endangered. And it's our job to look and to see as if our life depends on it. Some birds are difficult to see. They like it that way. The only time that you see a bird, the only bird that you see is when a bird doesn't mind being seen. You'll see a bird if it doesn't mind being seen, except for the ones that are in cages. There are some birds that are difficult to see because they're so common, because they're so mundane. They don't capture our attention. A lot like toothpicks. Toothpicks are hard to see. An individual toothpick, they are so common, so ordinary, their function is so brief that we fail to notice. Toothpicks are usually made out of Baltic birch or aspen. And if you've been to the mountains and you've been in an aspen grove, you know that where a branch was, it forms an eye. So when you step into an aspen grove, you are being watched. At the tip of this toothpick, there is a bird. And you'll need a little help to see it. So let me give it to you first.
Okay. Oh my.
Okay. So there are 5 birds. I'm going to tell you about the other 5 a little bit later in the service. I think we have a moral obligation to teach one another to see beauty, to experience beauty. If beauty has the ability to restore, if beauty has the ability to heal, in this fractured time, we have an obligation to teach one another to see, to experience beauty. Bird's eye maple. This is the beauty of yearning. The beauty of yearning, which really is a nice way to talk about Advent. But bird's eye maple is not a separate species of the maple tree. It's simply a feature of the grain. And it gets that feature, it gets those little bird's eyes, because it's when the trunk is impinged somehow. There's a boulder, or it's a part of the forest that doesn't get much light. And so what the tree is doing, it's not getting the energy that it needs to the roots, and so it keeps sending out more branches and more leaves. So each one of these eyes that you see here is an effort for the tree to get more, to reach more. Beauty, yearning. This little bird is a common ground dove. You can find them in southern Florida and in southern California. And surprise, surprise, it makes most of its living on the ground. And the ground in both of those places is in bad shape. From fires, from floods, from earthquakes, from you name it. And that is our common ground, this fractured planet of ours. I'll say more about the wood in a second, but it's from a pin oak tree. And when I pass this around, you'll notice that on the back there are these dark squiggly lines. It's called spalting, and it comes from the fungi that was feasting off of the tree. But a dove has eyes on the side of its head. That means that it's prey. The predator has the eyes in the front, and the prey has eyes on the side. That way the bird can see. And the eyes of the dove stick out a little bit on its head, protrude. And because of that, they can see a greater distance, about 340 degrees, which means that they can see what's ahead and they can see what's behind them. It means that the future and the past meet in the eyes of the dove. Same wood, same tree, pin oak. There's been some interesting studies recently about the relationship that oaks have with one another and how they communicate. And so if these two were communicating, I couldn't hear it, maybe talking about where they were on the tree. But the tree was in our front yard, flanked by 2 other trees. It was a great tree, 60, 70 years old, this oak tree was. And it served its function well in the time that we lived in that house. It was a wonderful anchor for a slack line. It set a great pick when we would be throwing frisbee or football. But this bird is finished, unfinished. This bird straddles the line between branch and bird. This bird is in a perpetual state of becoming. Cerulean warbler. Warblers, for the birders in the world, they're really hard to see. You listen for them. Actual size. The cerulean warbler, this is made of sugar maple from the tree of my childhood. We called it the rock tree because it had rocks under it. And when you get this bird, when it lands in your hands, you'll see that she's in pretty bad shape. She's missing some parts, and it's clear that she has offered her body up to other life forms that have made holes and made a home. Endangered, of course, but the cerulean warbler does something pretty amazing when it builds its nest, and she's the one that does all of the building. She builds a nest high up in the canopy with an open understory, which means she's up really high and there's nothing but ground underneath. And she builds that nest up 90 some odd feet in the air. 90 feet. The shoulder of the Statue of Liberty is about 90 feet. Songbirds apparently taste really good to hawks. And hawks don't have a difficult time in snatching them out of the air. And so if your nest is 90 feet up in the air, and you have 90 feet to go to get food, and it's all open, a hawk, which could be anywhere in the forest, sees you and would certainly eat you. So what she does, she goes to the edge of the nest and falls. She tumbles 89 feet 6 inches. She tumbles all the way down, and to all the hawks, she looks like a leaf. Inches before the ground, she untucks her wings and flies to safety. Very smart bird. I wonder what it was like the first time that she... This bird is made of butternut, same tree, different branch. It's a member of the corvid family, very smart family. This particular bird is a magpie. Magpies sit in the middle, in between, in terms of the scale of corvids. Ravens being at the top end, and then crows, magpies, blue jays. They're very smart birds. They're playful. If you get tired of cat videos, do a search of ravens, crows play, because they play. He's just messing with me. Corvids are very smart birds, and they are on a short list of species that have the ability to communicate displacement. Displacement is the word that linguists use when species talk about things that are not present to their senses. So a magpie, raven, crow, they can communicate to another magpie about something that's not in front of them. Food over there is probably the sentence. But the bird has to have the idea of what food is, even though food is not in front of them. And has to have the understanding that over there is not here. The ability to communicate that which is not present to the senses. Advent is a paradox of displacement. The world that we need and want and hope to come into being is not present to our senses. And Advent is that time of expectant, hopeful waiting for that time to come. paradox is this: though it's not present to our senses, doesn't mean it's not there. It simply means you haven't seen it, or heard it, or felt it. This new world that we're waiting for, this new order, this heaven, this nirvana, it's right here. It's not over there. It's not up ahead. It's right in front of your eyes. I'd like to know what you see.